Intermediate students to another intermediate lesson at learnpianolive.com. This is an intermediate lesson, so the assumption is that you can probably play a couple songs at least well enough to impress a couple friends. You might have some basic understanding of music theory or something, but you really haven't had any formal training. So if that's you, you're in the right place. If you feel, throughout this lesson like it's way too advanced, you might want to go back and check out yesterday's lesson. It's in the archives, the beginner's version of this lesson. That might answer a lot of your questions, but feel free to ask away, ask any questions. This is about you and me, so you got to ask questions so I know, how to help you best. And there's a couple other things I want to talk to you too about before this countdown clock hits 0. All right, first and most important, ask a lot of questions. The way that you're going to do that is there's a couple different ways. You can jump in the chat room and talk with the other students who are logged in at the same time. I'll be watching the chat room too. You ask your questions there, or if it's a question that's just for me, a question about the lesson, especially if you know it's one that's going to fit best at the question and answer time at the end, then you can just put your name and your question in the box below this video, click submit, and then I will get that. Now, if you're already in the archives, if you're watching this not live, but you're watching this in the archives, then make sure at the end of the lesson you click on the survey button. You don't have to fill out the entire survey. If you want to, I'd love your feedback, but really the best part of that is that you can put your question in there, and then when you click submit, then I will get all of your questions. I'll make sure that you get them answered, whether you're in the archives or you're live. Right next to this video, there should be a PDF button and an MP3 button. Now, you don't really need those till after the lesson because I'm going to be showing you on screen the PDF and showing you how to use it. And I'll play the MP3 during the lesson too, so you know at the end of the lesson how you're going to use that. Some people, though, like to print out the PDF ahead of time, so as I'm making notes on my version, they can make the same notes on their version, but works either way. All right, this is perhaps the most important part. You need to leave the lesson when you feel like you're sufficiently challenged. So, I'm teaching these lessons, 12 to 15 lessons a month. Normally, in traditional lessons, you're getting like a lesson every other week or so. So this is just way too much for you to take in. So, the goal is for you to get some little nugget of something that you can really practice on, really work on. Once you feel like you have that, then you really don't need anything else from me. Go practice. That's where this stuff is really going to happen. You're not going to get through this lesson and be able to play something really well. You're going to get through this lesson and have the information that you need to practice more effectively. That's really the goal here. So don't feel bad about taking off early. If you feel like halfway through the lesson you got as much as you can take in at that time, then go practice that thing, and then come back whenever you've got that thing down, or you're bored with it, or you just want to check out the next topic. Don't forget also that you've got the archives too. So if you want to see one little thing, just repeat it over and over and over. Just give me. Hopefully within 24 hours after the lesson, this thing will be up in the archives, so you can just go back and watch it over and over and over and over and just get that little segment down. So this lesson specifically, out of the 8 categories of musicianship, is going to be one that's focused on ear training. So that means teaching you how to really process and categorize the sounds that you hear, whether it's something that's on the radio or something some tune that you made up in your head. This is all about you being able to know, all right, so what are those sounds? What are the rhythms? How would I write that out? How would I play it? What key is it in? All of that stuff is ear training. So the other topics are going to be covered in other weeks, but this week, today, is going to be focused on ear training. All right, I'm ready. You ready? Let's go. All right, welcome back, everybody. I am very excited about today's lesson. This might be one of my favorite all-time lessons right here. This thing, if you've never done this before, now, of course, if you've been here for, the last 150 lessons or so, then you've probably already seen this chart that we're about to go over today. But if you've never seen it before, this could be one of the most life-altering things for ear training that you've ever encountered. So I'm very excited about the lesson. Let's jump into it. First, let me play your play-along track. It sounds like this. That was one time through, and then it repeats. So that was just a C for 2 bars, a C minor for 2 bars, an F for 2 bars, and then an F minor for 2 bars. And yesterday we talked about the major and the minor. So if you have any questions about anything we've done so far, you want to go check out that lesson. But if that all makes sense, then today we're just talking about how to recognize a note that gets played. So if you don't look at my keys here, and you just listen to this, knowing that that's the key of C and that you heard that one note, would you be able to pick out what that one note was? After today's lesson, you will have the tools you need to gain that skill. So then we could go on here. That one, you'll be able to pick it out that one. This one, or for example, this one. So if you can already do that, just knowing that this is a C and then a C minor and then an F and then an F minor, and that all made sense to you, then cool, you already have the skill. You don't need to work on today's lesson. But if you don't, then let's jump in and figure out what in the world is going on here and how you could do such magic yourself. So each of the scale degrees in any key. So if we're in the key of C, of course, we've got all white notes. And I purposely zoomed out here so you can't see as much of the notes, and it would be possible to ignore the notes if you wanted to. If we're in the key of C, the C, when you hear a C played, it should feel like, I call it home, but it could feel at rest, or it could feel like the base or the foundation, or it could feel like the ending, or it could feel like the beginning. There's all kinds of words to describe it, but it has its own feel that when we're playing in this key, that this note right here does not feel like a resting place, but this one does feel like the resting place, like home, like whatever that is for you. So what I did was, this is not the chart, the life-changing chart that I was talking about, but it might be. I don't know, for some people this has been a life-changing chart. This is the scale degrees for each of the keys, and you've gotten this on several other lessons because you use this stuff all over the place. But in the key of C, C is number 1. In the key of C, D is number 2. In the key of C, E is number 3, and so on and so forth. So these are all the numbers for all of the scales. Of course, we get up to number 7, and it just starts back over again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you're back to 1. All of the ones in a key should feel approximately similar. So in other words, no matter which C you play, when we're playing in the key of C, this one feels like a really low, big home to me. This one feels like a light, higher, but still locked in home, right? Versus like this note right here. Like, that's still in the key. It's still a white note, but it doesn't feel like the resting place. Or that one feels very comfortable. It feels pretty locked in. Like you could maybe end the song there, but it doesn't feel as home as that one right there. That definitely, to me, has its own special feel. And if you listen in this way, listening for what is the characteristic of this note, not knowing what the note is, then you'll eventually develop this relationship with 1 as well. And with all the other numbers. And that's really the goal from here until, the next, if you've never done this before, the next 4 to 6 years is developing these relationships with the notes so that when you hear a note, it just feels like a specific thing. Now, if you don't pay attention in this way, it won't happen at all. If you don't teach a kid their colors, then they will still see colors, but they won't have them categorized as, pick out the green one. Well, that's the green one because they haven't put a label on it. So this is just a way to put a label on the sounds that you're hearing so that as you listen to it, you can label it or categorize that sound and then be able to go, all right, so I heard a 1, then a 3, and then a 1, and then a 4, and then a 3, and then a 1. So then you can go, all right, so what key were they in? They were in the key of E flat. So 1, and then a 3, and then a 1, and then a 4, and then 1, a 3, and then 1. And that was the thing that I heard because I'm in the key of E flat. Now, that requires that I know the keys. So, practicing your scales or your keys or your finger trails or your tonal patterns or any of the other labels that we give to that is going to be important eventually because you want to be able to do this in all 12 keys. But for right now, just being able to hear a 1 in any key is still going to sound like the 1. So if we are in the key of E flat, the E flat is going to feel like home in the same way that we're in the key of C. 1 feels like, that C feels like home there. It's the 1. So the 1 of every key still feels like the 1 of every other key when you're in that other key. I don't know if that made any sense, but I was trying. Anyway, that is the feeling of 1. So if I were you, I would come down here. And I kind of left this open because some of these are going to require more description than others. But down here, I would do something like this. 1 feels like home. Now, what you might find is that based on different contexts, the different numbers might have slightly different colors to them. In the same way that in yesterday's lesson, we talked about how if you take a major song and you slow it way down, it can kind of sound sad and depressing. So you don't want to just go, all right, all major is happy and all minor is sad. If I feel sad, it's definitely minor. Because in different contexts, it might take on a slightly different shade of that color. So 1 is home to me because that one is the one that in all contexts that works. But of course, that's my word. That's the way that it feels to me. That might not be the one that you use there. You might use settled, or you might use, I don't know, use anything. But I'm just saying these descriptions down here may change over time as you find out, oh, hey, what note was that? It wasn't 1 because it didn't feel settled. And so you poke around and you find out, wait, hang on, that was a 1. So that was supposed to feel settled, but it didn't feel settled. I guess it's not maybe settled, but maybe like at rest. Yeah, both of those felt at rest, and then you would change your description of it. But again, this is all about building a relationship with each of the sounds that these create. I will say, you probably want to start out relatively slow on this. We're talking about taking years to develop relationships with all 7 tones, and then eventually the other 5 partial tones in there, the ones that are outside of the key. So each of the 7 has its own sound, and then each of the other ones that are outside of the key have their own sound too. Now there's only 12 tones, so you just have 12 relationships to build. But you want to start out with the ones that are inside the scale, because those are going to be the most common and the easiest to build a relationship with. My suggestion is, if you can, that you start out building a relationship with 1 and get used to what that sounds like. That means you can go to like songkeyfinder.com is one that you guys keep throwing at me, where you can like listen to a song and it'll tell you what key it's in. So it'll tell you, go listen to Garth Brooks, I Got Friends in Low Places. This one's in the key of E flat. I don't know if it is. I doubt it. He's a guitar player. It's probably in the key of E. But so it'll tell you what key it's in. You can go listen to that song and then go poke around in that key and go, all right, so what does a 1 feel like in this song right here? What does a 1 feel like right here? What does it feel like right here? Okay, yeah, I can kind of feel how that is 1. And then, move on to the next one. I'd recommend you go in this order if you want to be very methodical about it. So a 1 first, start developing that relationship, and then get used to what the 5 sounds like. Maybe another one to do at the same time would be the 7. So getting used to what the 7 sounds like. The 7 is called the leading tone. It's right below the 1 in every case. So if this is 1, it's right below it. And it's going to have the feeling of being almost home. So in almost every case, the 7 is going to feel like it's not quite finished. But if you just lean a little bit to the right, then you'll get there and you'll be at home. So, in the case of right here, that's the 7, and it feels like it's almost home. And so there's where our home is. So that 7 in my mind is always leaning towards home. It's the one that feels like it's about to fall over into home. So the 7 is a pretty easy one to find. And then after that, maybe finding the 3 and developing a relationship with the 3. I said the 7 is likely to fall into the 1. Now, again, these are just general guidelines. This is the relationship that I've built with these numbers and that several other people have built with these numbers. But of course, as with any relationship, this is about what that note does to you and how you interact with that note. So to you, the 7 might not feel like it's leaning into the 1. It does to me, very definitely. The 4 always feels like it wants to lean to the left into the 3. If you don't know what the 3 sounds like, it's hard to hear that relationship there. So the 4 is related to the 3 when I hear it. And then after that, maybe the 2 and the 6, and building those relationships last. They are going to be, in my experience, harder to find or harder to label because they don't have a definite place that they're moving, and they don't have a definite feel of their own. But again, that's just my relationship with them. Maybe my relationship isn't strong enough, and you'll have a very definite feel about a 2 and about a 6. But anyway, so those are those. And then down here, the goal is for you to go out, find those songs, maybe songs that you're already playing on your own or repertoire from Clapple Academy or whatever, and try to find what the different notes of the scale sound like inside of each of those keys. So there's that. Now, here is the, there we go. I don't know what's going on there. All right, here is the potentially life-changing part of the lesson, and this is outside of developing the relationships with each of the scale degrees. This is not that. This is changing topics, and would probably be well advised to make this 2 separate lessons, but instead I'm cramming it all into one because we have a ton of stuff tomorrow to do as well. But this is just finding the interval between 2 notes. So when you hear a series of notes, if you know the exact distance between each of those notes and you know your starting note, you can play the entire line. So if you hear a series of notes, 3 or 4 notes in a row, 5, 6, 7 notes in a row, in a phrase, and you want to be able to play that thing back, then if you know the distance between each of them, then you can start hopefully on the same note as the phrase that you heard and then play that same phrase. Now, here's the cool part. Even if you don't start on the same note, you're still going to make the same general sound as what you heard. So, for example, this thing right here. Hopefully you recognize that as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and you recognize that because of the distance between the notes, not because of the actual notes themselves. So that was mostly black notes right there, actually 3 black notes and 3 white notes. Let me play the same thing for you, only this time I'm going to use all white notes. Still sounds like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, only I'm using an entirely different set of notes. Now, almost entirely black notes again, and a different set of black notes. So these all sound like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star because when you hear a song, you're, in most cases, 9,999 times out of 10,000, quite literally, you're not hearing the actual individual notes. You're just hearing the relationship between the notes, and that's what makes our music, our melodies, is the relationship between the note that you just heard and the note that you're hearing now. Then the relationship between that note and the next note and the relationship between that and the next note. So this is a chart of all of the relationships that you're going to be hearing in melodies and what songs those start with. Let's give you a couple examples here. If you go 5 half steps up, so for an example that would be like C up to F. So C up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess I will zoom in for this part. But then there we go. If you go from C up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 half steps. C up to F, the name of that is a perfect fourth. That interval, the distance, is called a perfect fourth. And if you play it from C up to F, it sounds like Here Comes the Bride. It also sounds like Amazing Grace. So just take one of these. Don't try to memorize both of them, but just take whichever one of those like registered with you most? Like, oh yeah, that's Amazing Grace, or oh yeah, that's the Here Comes the Bride song. And that interval, every time you hear 5 half steps up, a note and then 5 half steps up, it's always going to sound like the beginning of either Amazing Grace or Here Comes the Bride. If you go in the opposite direction, instead of going C up to F, if you go F down to C, or, if you go the opposite direction, it's going to sound like George of the Jungle or I've Been Working on the Railroad. So, George of the Jungle, or, but that distance right there, if you go up, it's going to sound like Amazing Grace, or Here Comes the Bride. If you go down, it's going to sound like George of the Jungle, or I've Been Working on the Railroad, or a bunch of others. I just gave you 2 examples for each of these intervals, but that's how you're going to use this chart. The name of the interval, which will be important later on in theory if you care about that stuff, like literally in theory, in music theory, if you're doing Clapple Academy or something like that, or you take it a class in college, something like that. And then this is the distance that you're going to be traveling. And then here is going up. So all of these are what the songs would be if you're using that interval to go up. And all of these are examples going down. So that is the chart right there. And if you go to this website right here, it's probably the most useful website I've seen for creating these. In fact, originally in Clapple Academy, we were using that website to do all of the interval ear training. Let me show you what that's going to look like. Hopefully, if I can get this thing to work here. And can we go tablet only? Hello. Yes, you can still hear me. So then you want to go to this website right here. It's going to open up there, and you won't be able to hear these sounds, but I'll show you how you can use this. So here we go. You're wanting to do intervals, and then you just choose whichever intervals you're wanting to test yourself on. So you can go, and again, back to this chart over here. If you want to just work on perfect fourths, and let's say perfect fifths, you just want to test yourself on those and hear those back and forth, and then be able to tell the difference between a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth. Then you would go here, and you would say, all right, intervals are going to be perfect fourth, let me click, thank you, and fifth, there we go. And unclick all the rest of these here. There we go. So the only ones that we're doing are perfect fourth and perfect fifth. And then you click OK down here at the bottom, and then it will play for you an interval, which you can't hear right now because I'm on my tablet. It'll play for you the interval, and then you have to name whether that was a perfect fourth or a perfect fifth. So the one that we didn't hear that they played was a perfect fifth. And so then it will show you exactly what the notes were that they played for you. There we go. Can I zoom in? There we go. They'll play the interval for you, and then you can kind of test yourself on any of those that you're familiar with. Now, again, just like with the other stuff that we had done, you don't want to try all of you don't want to click all the buttons and do minor seconds and minor thirds and tritones and all that stuff, and do all the intervals. Build that relationship with maybe just 2 different ones, a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth, and test yourself on those over and over and over. And then after you're getting 100% on those, then add in one other interval. There's 12 intervals. Yeah, 12 intervals, up to 12 half steps. That right there is going to be the largest interval that you have. Past that, then we have what are they called? Compound intervals is what they have to be called. And that's intervals that are greater than an octave, which are really extremely rare in most melodies. So the times where you're going to hear like a C up to like a higher D almost never happens. So if you can hear these right here and you can identify, oh yeah, that was a perfect fourth, that's going to be 5 half steps. Oh, that next one was 4 half steps, that's going to be a major third. And then it goes down a minor second, which is 2 half steps down, or 1 half step down. Then you're going to be able to play all of these melodies. And again, this is a very, very long-term goal. Probably should have made this 2 different lessons, but anyway, that's a lot to work with. Hopefully, most of you already are gone because you're already working on something. But if you have questions, then let's get to those, see what we can do here. And either my private chat has crashed or we have but one question so far. Okay, that would be miraculous. All right, so how many of these intervals should I be able to hear by the time I'm in level 4? I assume you mean Clapple Academy level 4. If you mean CM level 4 or Kids Learn Piano Live level 4, then I don't know. Maybe specify that. I'm going to assume you mean Clapple Academy level 4, which is basically CM level 4. There are requirements in Clapple Academy for which types of intervals you need to be able to hear. So that will be introduced to you each level as you go. I will say there are college graduates who can't do much of that at all. And, yep, yeah, let's leave it at that. If you can identify these intervals, all 12 of these, you can pass the ear training portion of pretty much any college level theory course. You asked specifically about level 4, though. I'm not answering your question. It'd be good to have a few of these down by level 4. But if you don't, like I said, they'll be introduced to you as you go along. And yeah. So there's not a set that you would have to know for sure. And it looks like that's our only question for today. Again, there might be something wrong with the private chat, or maybe there's just everybody got depressed or excited and left already. But whatever the case is, if you're if you have questions and you're in the archives, or if you're live right now and you're saying, why aren't you answering my question? It's because I don't see your question. So anyway, until next time, I guess send me your questions privately, and I will send you your own private response. And until next time, you know I love you. Good luck. Have fun.